according to the time is very close, I would like to say a conclusion that for the past 18 years, ASEAN bring a lot of positive impact to Cambodia in many fields, especially in political, security, economic, and social impact, and make Cambodia, out of international isolation. And we also have changed, transfer from least developed country to the lower middle income country. And however, though we can see some challenging in ASEAN and also in Cambodia, we still have very optimism that we can move forward with a brighter future. So I want to close my remarks for the 15 minutes. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much. You still have time if you want to add it up later on. But I think your country have a very rich culture. For instance, in a few months, we have heard that Angelina Jolie make a Hollywood movie. I think all of us family with the history that I have seen is from the kids Cambodia. Professor Jav Sotarit mentioned about the history of the Cambodia, especially during the Civil War, and that's what we learned. Especially we are close country, we understand what's going on. But today you see that the prosperity, especially in terms of economic prosperity, and the country getting bigger and bigger. For instance, as Professor Jab mentioned about 7% GDP continuation of the GDP for so long is one of the things that we are happy to. Today, most of the time, get familiar with the goods from your country. I think especially the brand name that used to do in the United States or Europe, but now they're made from Cambodia. This is one of the things that I think is very important. We today, especially in the first session, I think it's good for us to get together and understand whatever. We don't just only talk about the scholar only. We share and we try to combine the scholarship with the common way of life. This is what I think is very, very fun to learn, and it's good for us to hear. So I move on to a second panelist, Professor Nguyen Huy Quang. He's from Vietnam, and he will give us a lot of insights about what's going on in Vietnam. Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, ladies, gentlemen, and colleagues. First, I would like to thank Professor Prapat and Center for ASEAN Studies, University of Thammasat University, have given me this chance to present the international conference at ASEAN at 50, looking back and moving forward. In my presentation, I would like to give some discussion on 50 years of ASEAN and Vietnam's roles and some contribution for the ASEAN development process in the past 50 years, especially the past 22 years since Vietnam became a member of ASEAN family. The outlines of my presentation have contained just only 4 main points. First one, I would like to give some, discuss some important issues in the past 50 years of ASEAN. And second is I go on to discuss Vietnam in ASEAN, the development process from foe from enemy. Vietnam and ASEAN used to be in different sides, opposite sides, both in its position as well as in ideological system. And some contribution of Vietnam as active player in ASEAN when Vietnam became a member in 1995. And the third point I would like to, maybe this one is looking forward to the first section of the conference, but also I would like to look for a little bit about the future of ASEAN. And last point is I would like to give some concluding remarks. As we know that ASEAN formed in 1967 with 5 initial members, as this morning Dr. Surin have mentioned that at that time that's also it was divided among ASEAN countries. And until 1999, when all 10 ASEAN countries had been admitted and become the Association of ASEAN, Southeast Asian nations of 10 member countries in Southeast Asia. Initially, ASEAN was voted to be against communists, and I think that the first aim of the ASEAN is the beginning of the stage of forming ASEAN in 1967 is just some kind of forming an association to protect ASEAN from encroaching of communists from the north to ASEAN countries. That I think the first and the very first and the most important strategies of ASEAN. And after that, maybe that economics and political cooperation will be arise after that. And ASEAN have achieved that greater cohesion in mid-1970s following the change balance of power after the end of wars in Vietnam in 1975. At that time, we have seen that some changing in ASEAN because when the Vietnam wars in Vietnam ended, and maybe at that point of time, ASEAN countries also view Vietnam as different from different aspects, from different angles, because during the war in Vietnam before 1975, that several countries in Southeast Asia also in the coalition with United States to fight in Vietnam. Also, another important issue, important milestone of ASEAN that ASEAN signed Treaty of Amity and Cooperation and Declaration of Concord and Bali Concord in Bali in 1976. That's why this point is also important, that marks the development of ASEAN from beginning of the forming ASEAN into some kind of more cohesion of ASEAN with some political and security cooperations. And ASEAN has been playing a considerable role in facilitating stability in Southeast Asia. That's a very important role of ASEAN during 1970s. And in the second, as the post-Cold War, after 1991, the ASEAN agenda was to stimulate trade and investment through AFTA and to help promote dialogues over security issues in Southeast Asia and in the wider Asia-Pacific region through ASEAN regional forums. That also marks the move, the transformation, the move from some cooperation within ASEAN in political securities and kind of protect ASEAN from influence of outsiders to promoting cooperation economics, especially in trade and investment. And in the context of globalization, ASEAN became a hub of, and play an important role in many regional cooperation architectures in Asia and Pacific. This one, we have talked a lot about the role of ASEAN to be the central role or the centrality of ASEAN. And as we witness that ASEAN just only the second regional groupings in the world after EU, or the first regional grouping in developing world was considered very successful in regional cooperation and cohesion. And ASEAN and Southeast Asia become strategic reason for balancing influence among power states, especially that ASEAN and Southeast Asia and the South China Sea region also become the reasons that strategically important and the influence among power states like the United States and China. This country want to gain influence in the region, and the process of balancing power seems to develop stronger and stronger by years. And partnership between Vietnam and ASEAN co-members evolve, which will have a major bearing on ASEAN continued vitalities, international credibility and capacity to continue to contribute to regional stability and prosperity that also marks the role of ASEAN in some time after becoming a member of ASEAN, that it also would play an important role in bridging the cooperation between ASEAN and other dialogue partners, as well as sustaining and maintaining peace and stability in Southeast Asia. And for becoming a member of ASEAN, both Vietnam and ASEAN gain benefit, especially for Vietnam. We have considered ASEAN as a platform for the country regional integration and global integrations. And from there on, we also develop multilateral cooperation with different countries and different partners in the world. And for ASEAN also have Vietnam in its membership in the association also makes ASEAN stronger and maybe increase ASEAN stand on international agendas. And also that increase ASEAN's international image and was received well by the ASEAN partners, especially dialogue partners. And also for Vietnam, that ASEAN, and so also as I have said, ASEAN as platform, also ASEAN created chance for Vietnam to revise its foreign policies and to consolidate its wider international relationships and to open international cooperation in various areas, especially in economics and political cooperation with other countries. For second second point, as I have mentioned in the outlines of my presentation, that Vietnam and ASEAN from before the wars in Vietnam, it means before 1975, that we consider as different sides of ideologies. We cannot say, we can say that Vietnam and ASEAN seem to be one time in the past, sometime in the past was enemy together. That also after that, after Vietnam war in Vietnam ended, that we developed and the relationship between Vietnam and ASEAN developed from foe to friendship and cooperation, and Vietnam become an active player in develop ASEAN into stronger regional association. After forming the state in 1945, Vietnam had little contact with the non-communist states in Southeast Asia. We know that because we follow that the group of socialist countries with China, some country in Asia, and most countries in Eastern Europe, that to be frankly, that after 1945, when we formed the country's state, we have very little contact with countries in Southeast Asia, even some countries, close country in geography like Thailand also, we don't have much contact. And during the war against US, Thailand and the Philippines supplied military forces to assist Saigon regime, and both allow their air bases to be used by the US force for bombing in Vietnam, and a policy which drew bitter criticism from Hanoi. And that's why during that time we think that the tensions, the relationship between Vietnam and this country during that time is very tense. And Vietnam did not have any diplomatic relation with Indonesia under pre-Sukarno regime, but otherwise its contact with its Southeast Asian neighbors was minimal, to the at least, I think. The 5 initial members from ASEAN was all avowed anti-communist, and several had sizable communist insurgencies to contend with. At that time, in my research, also in history of Association of Southeast Asian Nations, that sometime during the time of forming ASEAN, that ASEAN just want to build as a group, just like a wall to protect the communists from the north. And ASEAN was open to other countries in Southeast Asia, but there was that at that stage that little basis for any contact with Vietnam, and Vietnam is very quite difficult to contact and to be fulfilling its aim of becoming a member of ASEAN countries. And for its part, Vietnam was suspicious and critical of ASEAN, with its shores as a vehicle for continuation of Western influence in Southeast Asia. The end of war in Vietnam in 1975 and the unification of Vietnam in 1976 made ASEAN members concerned that the powerful united Vietnam should not influence adversely the political and military balance of power in Southeast Asia, and acted to upgrade ASEAN's cooperation effort from Bali Summit in 1976 onwards. With unification of Vietnam in 1976 also, that marks the point of ASEAN to upgrade ASEAN cooperation it made in Bali Summit in 1976 February. And after 1976, Vietnam and ASEAN members began to develop bilateral relations and initiate some tentative contacts for just an initial contact between Vietnam and ASEAN members. And Vietnam began to reduce its suspicion of ASEAN as a group of breaching the influence of Western countries in Southeast Asia. And the cautiously promising phase in regional relations was replaced by renewed suspicion in 1978 during the Cambodian crisis. The increase in outflows of refugees from Vietnam caused great difficulty and concern to many ASEAN countries. And also relations between Vietnam and ASEAN began to change from the mid-1980s, especially since Vietnam implemented its economic reforms under slogan Đôi Môi in 1986. And after that, especially in the 1990s, contact between two sides, it means between Vietnam and other countries in ASEAN, increased rapidly. And high-level visits was exchanged by senior leaders between Vietnam and ASEAN countries. Vietnam and 6 ASEAN members gave attention to issues of formal association between them in early 1990s. And in 1992, Vietnam signed Treaty of Amity and Cooperation and gained observer status in 1993 and accepted as a founder member of the ASEAN Regional Forum in 1994. It means that the process development of relationship between Vietnam and ASEAN to develop rapidly in 1990s, early 1990s, and especially the milestone of ASEAN for Vietnam and ASEAN is 28 July 1995. Vietnam gained full membership of ASEAN. Vietnam became the 7th member of ASEAN. And since then, relationship between Vietnam and ASEAN member improved, and gradually the misunderstanding before become less, and Vietnam and ASEAN gradually understand each other better. As a membership, ASEAN has already helped Vietnam consolidate its wider international relationship and improve Vietnam's status in the region and the world as well. And as the member of ASEAN, Vietnam has worked hard to secure peace and conciliation among Southeast Asian states, and which was once deeply divided by war, during Vietnam War, and Vietnam also led effort within ASEAN to ensure regional security. Vietnam signed the Treaty on the Southeast Asian Nuclear Weapon-Free Zone in December 1995, and was the founding member of the ASEAN Regional Forum in 1994. And Vietnam was very proactive toward regional stability. Along with Philippines, Vietnam has made constant effort to put the East Vietnam Sea internationally called South China Sea Zone with ASEAN agendas, ensuring conflicts is dealt with a constructive and peaceful way. And Vietnam has shown constant support for the DOCs and ASEAN 6-point principle on ESCs and the ongoing process of COC. And also Vietnam called for the settlement of dispute by peaceful means on the basis of international law and the 1982 UNCLOS, United Nations Convention laws on seas. And Vietnam interest in ASEAN is not limited to security, but also in economics. That promotes that Vietnam and ASEAN countries economic cooperation develop rapidly. And also Vietnam very active, has an active role in forming ASEAN community, especially ASEAN economic communities in 2015. And also Vietnam was also proactive in economic cooperation, not only within ASEAN, but also within ASEAN and its dialogue partners and cooperation partners. And after 1997 crisis, in Hanoi Summit in 1998, Vietnam issued the idea and proposal of narrowing development gaps among ASEAN members. It implemented in Hanoi Plan of Action, and in 34th AMM, as chair, Vietnam played an important role in passing a declaration of narrowing development gap among ASEAN countries. And continuing making it effort toward establishing ASEAN economic communities, Vietnam undertook domestic change to integrate itself with groupings, and the country has gradually restructured